Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Fireline. I'm your host, Melvin Stone, and in this edition of Fireline, we will recap the events which occurred in the year of 1988. This special edition of Fireline will also introduce the 911 system, where we will discuss and explain to you exactly what happens the moment your call is received until an emergency vehicle reaches your front door. So we'd encourage you to sit back, enjoy the video, see if you can recognize some familiar faces. And by the way, the best to you and your family in the upcoming new year. Do you ever wonder what happens when you call 911 for a fire or a rescue emergency? Well, let's take a look. First, the call is placed.
Is this 911? There's a fire! There's a fire!
Then it's received at the Tampa Fire Department's Signal Division. The operator then gets the information from the caller while the address from where the call originates appears on a screen simultaneously.
Tampa Fire Rescue, what is your emergency? What's on fire, ma'am?
Tampa Fire Rescue.
What's the address?
Engine 20.
Okay, ma'am, I have help on the way.
The operator then calls the appropriate fire station and dispatches the firefighters to your location.
Standby, this is a code 12. Standby, this is going to be for Engine 1, Engine 5, Aerial 1,
Melvin,
Rescue 1, Rescue 44, Chief 4, Code 12, 210 East Columbus, 210 East Columbus, QSL 1.
QSL 1.
That's what happened when you call 911. So now let's review the year 1988.
Morgan Command to Engine 1 Portable.
Mr. Chuck Sutnick, who has volunteered his time to be our videographer. Chuck, would you like to tell those firemen out in the field exactly why is it that you do this?
Well, videography is a hobby of mine, and providing some kind of public service is always rewarding, and one way to do it and have an exciting way of doing it is to video the fires and extrications, and then let the fire department use them for training and critiques.
Well, Chuck, thanks so much for coming by and visiting with us at Fireline.
It's a pleasure, Melvin.
And we really appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedule to stop by, and also for shooting that wonderful video. So there you have it, another edition of Fireline, the year 1988. Thank you all for joining us, and please stay tuned for our next edition.